Hey y'all, what is up? Keasbey here, and today we are going to be looking at some Memento test hands. But before we get into all that, don't forget to drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel for even more. Okay, so a few notes up top. First and foremost, this is post Legacy of Destruction Memento, meaning that you cannot play this deck in its current form until Legacy of Destruction comes out in the TCG. However, if you do want to get a head start at that, and I do highly recommend it, this deck is really cool, really non-linear, and has a lot of varying routes that all get you to the same endpoint. I think it would be a really good time to start picking up the deck and practicing all of that right now so that when it does come out, you can hit the ground running. Next, if you are not familiar with Memento and are thinking about picking up the deck, before you watch this video, I do highly recommend you check out the Memento deck profile that I posted a little while ago. Quick caveat to that, I've updated the deck since then. It's nothing major that's really going to affect this video, but I still recommend checking out the deck profile. We go through what every card in the Memento archetype does, their mechanics, some ruling stuff, and even some combo plays that are probably actually going to come up in this video as well. And last but not least, generally with our test hand videos, I assume going first with no interruption and play the hands accordingly. This time, however, I am going to talk a little bit about what we can do if we get interrupted, some salvage plays, and things like that. So, without further ado, let's get into the test hands. Alright, so we're going to give the deck a nice, good shuffle. And let's just do a cut. Cool. And let's kick it off. Test hand number 1. Alright, so we've opened Tatsu, we've got a starter. Nibiru, not too bad. Anguish, Bone Party, and Ghost Mortar and Moonlit Chill. So this is a really solid hand, but I'll talk a little bit about where we could get interrupted. We're going to go ahead and open here with Anguish. Anguish would generally search Tatsu, so if Anguish gets ashed here, we're totally fine. If Anguish gets impermed here, it's a little trickier. We could just fire off Bone Party immediately and swap into a Darkblade, which will set us up for later in the turn. We could also let it resolve and do that later. Again, we have the search target that we were going to go with Anguish for, so we wouldn't really have to do anything there. And then we would kind of more or less have full combo from that point. We could play through one interruption. It would take two very, very precisely timed interruptions, and our opponent would have to really know how this deck works to stop this. If we did get interrupted twice, we would still end on at least Combined Creation and Cranium Burst. It really just depends on the interruption, but that's like the bare minimum we would end on. The only major thing that our opponent could do to completely wreck us on this one would be Nibiru, but I haven't been Nibiru'd with this deck in a while, knock on wood. So let's just play out the hand. We'll say we got ashed here. Let's just assume that. So we're going to fire off Tatsuno Toshigo, special summon it, and we will go ahead and activate the effect, blowing itself up. Again, if our opponent went to imperm this, we could just Bone Party out into Horn Dragon, and that would actually get us even more things to send to graveyard. So not the worst thing in the world if we get hit there. All right, so we're just going to assume it didn't happen though at this point. Let's go with, we're going to send a Darkblade, and we're going to go ahead and send Mace. So now, again, Anguish was ashed, not impermed. We're going to go ahead, activate Anguish, targeting the Mace, special summon it out. And now we'll go ahead, activate Mace, blowing itself up, and we will add our fusion spell to hand. So I do just want to take a quick moment. If you did watch the deck profile, and you've watched the one card combo video that I did as well, one of the major changes that I did make to the deck is I dropped down to one copy of Mace and one copy of Goblin. Not really a huge difference in the one card variants of the combos. I think there's one or two where you cycle through multiple copies of Mace, but those are very easily adjusted once you get a good familiarity with the deck. The main difference is a lot of times, instead of going Goblin to send Gaddock and the fusion spell to graveyard to get it into rotation, we're generally going to use Mace to get it into rotation so that we could shuffle the Mace immediately back into the deck if we get to overextend and add it to our hand. So we're going to go ahead, fire off the fusion spell. Like I said, Mace is going back, and we'll just put Tatsu back as well. And that is going to get out our Twin Dragon. I rehearsed this, by the way. I keep calling Twin Dragon Horn Dragon and everything, so I really practice saying this properly. All right, so Twin is going to trigger. Since we only have Twin on the field, Twin's going to blow itself up. And from there, we will go ahead and add Horned Dragon, the actual Horned Dragon, and Combined Creation. Twin Dragons when destroyed effect is going to trigger, and that is going to get us Darkblade. We can go ahead, fire off this Darkblade, and that is going to get us Goblin. From here, we can go ahead, fire off the Goblin, and that is going to get us our field spell and Gaddock to the graveyard. Gaddock's going to go ahead and trigger, special summoning itself out, and we'll target the field spell, add it to our hand, and let's activate the field spell. So from here, we are going to activate our fusion spell in the graveyard, banishing it, and we'll go ahead and destroy our little Gaddock. Bye, buddy. And that is going to get us, we're in a blind game 1, so I'm going to go ahead and get Cranium Burst. I just think, like I said in the 1-card combo video, in a blind game 1 scenario, I think Cranium Burst is the best thing to get. It gives you the most possible potential interactions. Field spell is going to trigger, targeting the Gaddock. We only have one possible target, so, well, not target, it doesn't target. Only one possible summon, and that's Goblin. So from here, we're going to go ahead and fire off this Bone Party. We will destroy Combined Creation in our hand, and that will let us special summon out. Doesn't super matter, we're just going to go Tatsuno Toshigo here. We could also, as well, if we don't mind not having Horned Dragon, and I actually think we're going to do that instead, we could just add Mace directly to our hand here. And now, because we have multiple names, we'll go ahead, special summon out the Horned Dragon, and we will link these both off into IP Masquerena. So now we're going to shuffle back 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's go 5 here, back into the deck. So I'm not as concerned with this hand about having Anguish in the graveyard going into my opponent's turn because I already have the Mace in hand. And we are going to put Combined Creation from our graveyard onto the field. Zone placement doesn't super matter. I just don't like putting it in a Relinquished Anima zone. And we will go ahead and set Cranium Burst, and during the end phase, Mementotlan will activate, letting us set the Bone Party from graveyard. So now, we go into our opponent's turn with Mace already. We didn't have to search it. Plus, when our opponent activates a card or effect, whether or not we negate it with Cranium Burst, we special summon back out Horned Dragon. Then we can go ahead, fire off the Bone Party, destroying the Horned Dragon, and letting us special summon out either Anguish or Gaddock. We're just going to do Anguish here. So now we get Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2. Anguish will search for a copy of Goblin in this case. And then Chainlink 1, blow up this and 2 of our opponent's monsters. Or face up cards in general. Plus from here, we still have Goblin, and we have Mace. So protection from targeting, stealing a monster, go into SP Little Knight. And then depending on what else we needed to do, like it's very easy from there. We could just go into Ghost Mourner and then just start linking off, go into Dark Charmer into Selene if our opponent has a Dark in the graveyard, and then bring back Anguish, which will also trigger her effect as well, which is really cool. And then we just do an access code line to take the game. So yeah, all in all, really solid hand. Honestly, the only major difference that an interruption there would have made is or an extra interruption would have made is we would have had to use Bone Party early. So we would have ended with one less piece of interaction there than we did. But still, Cranium Burst is really strong. And yeah, that Mace SP Little Knight play is killer as well. All right, so that was a pretty solid opening one. Let's do another test hand. All right, we've given the deck a good shuffle. Let's give it a cut. Side note, who remembers back when remote duels were going on, telling your opponent the amount of cards to take off the top for a cut? I do. All right, so we've opened Nibiru, Gaddock, not ideal, we don't want to see Gaddock, Fusion, Bone Party, and Talents. This hand's a little janky. This is one of those ones we're talking about the interruptions is going to be a little weird. We would fire off Bone Party. If Bone Party got ashed, so let's just assume that it did, we're going to go back in a moment. We could Talents, and we would honestly have to Talents to draw 2. So let's just say, not great. So let's just add those to our hand. I'll play this out as though we got Ash there. Basically, our move would be normal summon Gaddock, get Bone Party back to hand, set the Bone Party, and go into our opponent's turn, hoping that Ash and Nibiru will get us through. We'll Bone Party the Gaddock when we get a chance to go into Darkblade, and then try again on our next turn. But we're going to go ahead and assume that this didn't get ashed. So we have to Bone Party out the Gaddock. We didn't spellman this, by the way. This would have been Bone Party from our hand. Very important. And we'll get Darkblade. So safe to assume our opponent doesn't have Ash. All right. So from here, we would normal summon Darkblade, activate the effect. So now it gets a little bit weird. If our opponent had Ash and they saved it, we could fire off talents, kind of scope through their hand, see what else they got, go into fusion, and then go off from there. So, you know what? Let's just assume that that happened. So they Ashed the Darkblade, we fire off talents, we're taking a look at their hand, and we get rid of their second piece of interaction. So now we do have full knowledge of their hand. We are going to go ahead and fire off fusion. So because we destroyed Gaddock via the Bone Party, we can fuse from graveyard. So we're gonna you to the grave, you into the deck, and that is going to get us our Twin Dragon. So again, we've been interrupted once. Our opponent ashed the Darkblade. We just assume that they let the Bone Party through. Twin Dragon's going to go ahead and trigger, has to blow itself up, and that is going to get us Tatsuno Toshigo. And let's get Combined Creation early. Again, this is one of those things where we could get Combined Creation later. I just prefer to get it earlier. Twin Dragon's going to trigger, and that'll special summon out our Darkblade. We're going to fire off the fusion spell, banishing it, and that will pop the Darkblade, and we have to get our field spell here. So that's going to go to our hand. We're going to go ahead, we'll activate the field spell, and now we will special summon out Tatsuno Toshigo. Activate the effect, blowing itself up, and that is going to let us send Anguish, Goblin, and Mace to the graveyard. Field spell is going to trigger, and we have a couple options here. The best one's to get Anguish. Anguish effect, we're going to grab Twin Dragon. We could have also foregone sending the Mace and held on to it, and then just searched Mace here, so we go into our opponent's turn with Mace, but I didn't feel like doing that. We're going to go ahead, activate Anguish, blowing herself up, and that will target the Goblin. So we're going to activate Goblin, blowing himself up, and that is going to send Gaddock, who hasn't used any of his effects yet. Again, this gets a little weird because now we do have hand knowledge, so like you would search your back row based on what your opponent has. Keep in mind, we are going to have Bone Party, so we'll have access to that. So it's really, is Fractured Dance or Cranium Burst better in this situation? So let's just assume Cranium Burst is better in this situation. So that's going to go. Gaddock will also go to the graveyard, activate, special summon itself out, and then we'll target and get the Cranium Burst back. We could also, once again, get Mace back here. We're not going to. So now we are going to special summon out Horn Dragon. And once again, what's the better play based on what our opponent has? I'm just going to do the generic play here. Link these two off into IP Masquerena. And then we'll go ahead and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 back into the deck. I want to leave Horn Dragon in there specifically this time, and I will show you why. For Combined Creation. So we'll set Cranium Burst, pass to our opponent, and during the end phase, field spell will let us set Bone Party. So now we're going to our opponent's turn. We have pretty much full knowledge. They're going to have the one unknown at the top. And, you know, we're assuming that we set up specifically to deal with what they've got. So our opponent activates a card or effect. Whether or not we hit it with Cranium Burst, we special summon out the Horn Dragon. So now, once we have an opportune moment, we fire off Bone Party, we destroy the Horn Dragon, and that is going to get us out our Gaddock again. So we're going to go Chain Link 1, Horn Dragon, Chain Link 2, Gaddock, Chain Link 3, Mementotlan. So Horn Dragon, we're going to go ahead, target the Gaddock and 2 of our opponent's face-up cards. Gaddock, we're going to target Bone Party, and Mementotlan, we target Horn Dragon, and special summon out Anguish. Gaddock resolves, we get back our Bone Party, and now Twin Dragon resolves, destroying Gaddock and our opponent's 2 face-up cards. We're going to go Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2. So Gaddock, because it was sent to the graveyard by a Memento card effect, special summons itself out, and then Anguish is going to go ahead and get us a search for that Mace. So now we have, let's just say we use 1 Cranium Burst. We've got 4 Cranium Bursts left. We've got Mace to steal one of our opponent's remaining monsters if they have any left after that Horn Dragon. And then from there, you know, let's just say we do that, steal a monster. We have Keasbey Little Knight. or Underworld Goddess of the Closed World is another very funny option to go into off of IP Masquerena. And again, this is entirely going to depend on what our opponent is doing. Also, Unchained Abomination is pretty funny too. So yeah, pretty solid there. And once again, I really can't stress enough how cool getting to see our opponent's hand would be in that case, because we really can set up to deal with exactly what they're going to go for. So let's go ahead and do one last test hand. And I think this one, we're just going to go ahead and actually assume no interruption. So we're just going to go off with as much resources as possible. All right, we have given the deck a good shuffle. Let's go ahead, cut the deck. And 1 for 1, Horn Dragon, Fracture Dance, Bone Party, and Talents. Okay, so pretty solid hand. I will say what you want to do to make sure, if our opponent has Ash Blossom, we would lose to it. The way that we would play around Ash Blossom for this hand would be we would fire off Bone Party first, because Bone Party doesn't do anything for cost. So if our opponent ashed the Bone Party, we would actually be able to scout for interruption with Talents. And I know I said we were doing no interruption, but let's just pretend we do interruption on this one. Why not? So we scout for interruption. We see what's going on. Cool. We are ready to go. We're going to fire off 1 for 1, send the Horn Dragon for cost, and that is going to go ahead and let us special summon out Goblin. So in this case, we want to go the Goblin route. It just gives us more materials to work with. We do have Perfect Knowledge at this point, though, so we know our opponent's got nothing. And remember, we have not normal summoned yet. We're going to fire off Goblin, blowing himself up. And that is going to send Goddick and Fusion to the graveyard. Goddick's going to trigger, special summoning himself out. Then we will target the Fusion spell and get it back. And let's immediately fire it off. So we are going to shuffle back Goblin, and we're going to shuffle back the Horn Dragon. And that is going to let us summon out Twin Dragon. Twin Dragon's going to trigger, we'll blow up the Goddick, and that is going to let us add Darkblade and Combined Creation. Once again, remember, we have not normal summoned. So we're going to go ahead, activate the Fusion spell, blow up our Twin Dragon, and that will let us add a copy of our field spell. There we go. Horn Dragon's going to trigger, we'll just get back the Goddick, it's a body. We have to do that there anyway, so might as well. Activate our field spell, and we'll go ahead and normal summon Darkblade. Go ahead, activate Darkblade, blowing himself up, and that is going to go ahead and get us into Anguish. So we'll activate Anguish, and that is going to get us Tatsunoo Toshigo. We'll go ahead, activate Tatsu, and we'll activate his on-field effect, blowing himself up, and that is going to send Anguish, Mace, and Goblin to the graveyard. Goblin's there for names. So we'll go ahead, activate our field spell now, special summon back out the Mace. Go ahead, activate Mace, blowing himself up. And we have Fracture Dance already, so we might as well get Cranium Burst. And from here, we are pretty much set to go ahead and link off into IP Masquerena. And then we'll go ahead and shuffle back 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 back into the deck for Combined Creation. So the only real difference that would have happened if we hadn't been interrupted on this hand is we would also have Horn Dragon on field, so we would immediately have access to the Bone Party play, but you know, didn't work out that way. So now from here, set 2, go into the end phase and set Bone Party. And from here, we pretty much have access to like everything that we did before. And this time we have Fracture Dance as well. So pretty solid. Okay, we're going to do one more. This time we're really going to assume no interruption. Okay, so we are going to go ahead, fire off the Bone Party. We'll destroy the Horn Dragon, and that will let us special summon out a copy of Darkblade. Now remember, this is a special summon. We haven't normal summoned yet. We're going to go ahead and now normal summon out our Mace. Activate the effect of Mace, blowing it up. And that is going to get us Field Spell to hand. We're going to go ahead, fire off the Field Spell. And we'll go ahead and activate Darkblade here, blowing himself up. And that will special summon out Anguish. Anguish effect. We'll go ahead and grab Tatsunoo Toshigo. We will special summon out Tatsunoo Toshigo, and we'll activate the effect, blowing himself up. And that will let us send Goblin and Anguish to the graveyard. Remember, you don't have to use all 5 level worths of sends. It's just an up to. So now we'll go ahead, activate our field spell. It really doesn't matter where in the combo we activate the field spell. We're actually going to have an unused effect, either in Anguish or in the field spell. We end on kind of the same amount of stuff anyway, so we'll just do it now. So Goblin's going to hit the field. We're going to go ahead, activate Goblin, blowing himself up, and that will let us send our fusion spell and Gaddock to the graveyard. Gaddock is going to trigger in the graveyard, special summoning himself out, and then Gaddock will target our fusion spell, giving it back to us. Okay, so let's go ahead, fire off the fusion spell, and we'll shuffle back. Might as well do Mace and Horn Dragon to special summon out Twin Dragon. Twin Dragon will go ahead, blow up the Anguish, add that Horn Dragon we just shuffled back, and our combined creation. We will go ahead, activate our fusion spell, banishing it, to blow up the Twin Dragon, and that will let us add our blind game 1 search, Cranium Burst. Twin Dragon's going to trigger, does not matter who we get back, everyone's used their hard onces, so we'll just get back Anguish. And now we'll go ahead, link them off into IP Masquerena. You can go directly into SP Little Knight here, by the way, if like you're worried about into Biru, you have a feeling that your opponent has one. SP Little Knight will let you blink out Combined Creation. We'll lose the Horn Dragon, but it doesn't really matter. We'd much rather keep Combined Creation. And now from here, we can go ahead and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Or actually, let's leave you in the graveyard and use you. So we'll go into our opponent's turn with these 3 in the graveyard. Just because we have an additional copy of him and I'd rather put as many mementos back into the deck as possible. So those are going to go back into the deck for Combined Creation. And I'm glad that this is on camera so I can show this. I just made a very big mistake. You always want to, if you are intending to summon out Horn Dragon, you always want to do that first, because now that we've shuffled everything back, can't summon out Horn Dragon. So let's just go ahead, reverse that. Pretend we didn't do that. Special summon out Horn Dragon first. Now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Combined Creation. Glad I got to talk about that. So from here, we would go ahead, set Cranium Burst, and I'm actually going to hold this Bone Party in hand just for next turn, because during the end phase, we're going to actually get to set the one from Graveyard. So yeah, pretty solid end board. So that is some Memento test hands. Like you saw, this deck is really, really malleable. There's a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B, which is really cool. Plus, you know, we saw playing through some interruptions on it, which also is great as well. Anything off the talents is a little awkward to do an end hand for, because what we see off of talents is going to entirely dictate what we do with the rest of our board. But I just kind of went with like what you would do in a generic situation there anyway. But just keep in mind that you would want to adjust your searches and end board accordingly based on that. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel for even more, and I will catch y'all later.